But let me talk a little bit about standard schedules and what they look like. And I'm going to talk about two of them parallel. One of them, both of them are direct care staff based. Most standard fee schedules in Medicaid these days are direct care staff based schedules. In the last 9 years, you don't find any good rate work that isn't predicated on direct care staff mix. In long-term care, you have direct care staff, and that's usually the wage. And then you have program support, employment-related expenditures, and G&A. This is a very common structure. This was a structure that I created in Arizona back in '95, and now it's gone through 17 different iterations, and other consulting firms are doing it as well. Then I want to contrast that with an FQHC, Federally Qualified Health Center. If I try to say that too fast, it can I get messed up. Clinical staff, and then there's one called financial costs of other clinical, ERE, and G&A. This sometimes they'll insert one here called community support. That one's going away because targeted case management is coming into the picture. What's interesting is that these are cost components, and they're driven by, predicated on the clinical staff mix or the direct care staff mix in the case of long-term care. But in the case of FQHC, those are in regulations. The California FQHC regs describe those components. So the reason I'm bringing this up, the reason I'm showing you this, is that it gives you an idea of where those standards come in. If you look at the California FQHC regs for HIV and AIDS, we created FQHC rates in California for HIV and AIDS in LA County, as well as in Oregon and in Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona. The clinical mix is 2 MDs to 1 RN. That's a clinical standard. And you can use that information to create a rate. You just go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, find out what a doc costs in Los Angeles County, what an RN costs in Los Angeles County, blend them, and then add these different component percentages, and you've got your rate for an hour. Convert that hour to a relative value unit, and you're done. So what you're really basically doing is you're creating rates out of standards. And the idea goes that anyone who provides that service is going to be expected to meet a standard of 2 docs to 1 RN. And that rate should be sufficient. So the only time that the standardized rate issues become regional is when there's demographic influence, when there's demographic differentials. When a doctor in Miami costs a whole lot more than a doctor in Tallahassee, and you have to create demographic differentials. But standard fees, if they're good standard fee structures, always go to the standards of the service first. There's another standard example in medically intense group homes or in step-down facilities when you're in the acute care environment. Medicaid has a variety of different standards for those environments that refer to the number of RNs relative to the number of LVNs or LPNs. And this, as far as supervision is concerned, it's either 1 to 5 or 1 to 8, depending on what state you're in. So that what Medicaid is saying is we really don't want an RN supervising more than 5 nurses or more than 8 nurses. You get more than 8 nurses, you need another RN. That's a standard. But you can use that standard to create rates. You just cost out an RN, cost out the 5 non-RNs, and blend them and go through the stuff. So you're really not doing it according to a person. You're creating a rate according to a standard. And then the next question is, which standard of the service does John need? That's where the assessment comes in. And that's why it's so important to have a good assessment. When I went back, remember on the concerns for standardized fee schedules? The concern is that you may be using the wrong assessment instrument. Even if you have really good standardized rates that are really tightly done according to standards, if you're not making a decision who gets which rate based on an appropriate assessment protocol, it's not going to work anyway. It's not going to work either. You'll have money being allocated in the wrong places. I know that's, again, I apologize for moving fast, but I'm trying to give it all to you in an hour and a half.
So is the idea there to do away with the assessments? They can be caged any way, they can be manipulated more on the standards, or?
Well, the standards drive you to the rate. The standards drive you to the construction of the rate. If you're going to have a standard fee schedule, you're going to need more than one rate. You may need as many as 10 or 15 rates for the same service because the different standards may apply to different situations. If you have multiple standards for the same service, then you're going to need something that you can use to decide who gets which rate. Where this is probably the most, where there's the most pressure on this kind of activity is in group homes. A single rate for a group home is never going to work in any environment unless the billing unit is a staff hour. But like for physical therapy, nah. The services apply to anyone who uses physical therapy. The only thing that may cause you to create more than one physical therapy rate is demographic. If you're in an environment where the physical therapist has to travel 50 miles just to see somebody, they're not going to work for the same rate as someone who's in downtown Phoenix.